Morning, everyone. Morning, Richie B. Have yourself a wonderful day. You know, I was going to say Richie, but I don't want to get my Richies crossed here because we have another Richie. So, Richie B, you have yourself a wonderful day and good morning, team. Thanks for joining me as we untangle. At 10:15 this morning, we're going to be having Constitutionally Speaking, and that goes to 10:30. And of course, our guest is the public defender, Arlene Harrison Henry. And we also have this morning as our guest, Deputy Public Defender, Herbert McKenzie. For those who have just joined us, my name is Elise. I'm on the Bridge 99 FM. And we are on the Bridge every Tuesday morning from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're standing by for our feature, Constitutionally Speaking. Good morning.
Hi, morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm good, and you?
I'm good this morning. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about. Let's begin.
No, before that, we have Mr. McKenzie along with me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know who Mr. McKenzie is, he's Herbert McKenzie, Deputy Public Defender, and we're just speaking to Arlene Harrison Henry, who is the Public Defender. So we're ready?
Yeah, we're good to go.
All right. All right. So the Office of the Public Defender completed a study earlier this year about the Disaster Risk Management Association. We've been talking a lot about this and its impact on the Bull Bay community. Why was it imperative to conduct this study, and particularly why the Bull Bay community?
The Bull Bay community became important because it was the first community that was put under curfew and quarantine and so on. You will recall that would have taken place sometime last year in and around March, April, not remembering the exact date. And, you know, we went out there to see what was happening, how the curfew, how the quarantine was being managed, what provisions, particularly what provisions were made for residents of the community, the response of the community to the situation. So we also went to Corn Peace out in Clarendon. We went out to St. Mary too. To examine how these things are put in operation.
And in addition to that, we were getting reports from these communities who were quarantined early in the pandemic that the care packages and the provisions which were promised to them were not as forthcoming as they were expecting. Mm-hmm. And it was even worse in situations where there were young children in the household, because the care package is not include what would commonly call it to make a baby type food. Mm-hmm. So that was what prompted us to go into areas. And some of our findings included what appeared to be partisan distribution.
Ooh.
And indeed, and in fact, you know, if we look at our own findings and we compare that with opinions expressed in the Integrity Commission Report 2019-20, their second annual report, page 6, where the chairman, while not addressing the 7 Mile, 8 Mile Bull Bay area or communities, made an observation, and that is, and I quote, parliamentarians are not supposed to be engaged in the distribution of gifts, scarce resources, or spoils. And we found, we certainly received reports of this occurring, and on both sides, not one side alone.
Yes.
In addition, we were receiving complaints from residents that whilst the supply of food and basic necessities were short in coming forward, they were being prevented from going to shop. and they were being forced to stay in their yards, so to speak.
Yes.
So those were some of the things that caused us to go there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we want to convey is that the Disaster Risk Management Act, as you would know, is one that is schemed in a way that calls for the involvement of citizens all the way to the individual level. Now, if you had been following our constitutionally speaking program before we came to the bridge, it would be true to say that we have been consistent with this position and our understanding of the statutory framework of the Disaster Risk Management Act. Because remember, Jamaica has been declared a disaster area from last year, March.
Mm-hmm.
And the involvement of citizens, that is right down to the man on the ground, the man, the woman, and the child on the ground in communities. So the Act does this through the establishment of parish disaster committees, zonal committees, and the statute emphasizing collaborating with local authorities, the participation of community-based organizations, non-governmental organizations, volunteers, everybody to be brought together in the fight against disasters. And of course, the legislation emphasizes public education in the fight against the pandemic at the local level. And we want to suggest too that certainly in terms of vaccinations or the distributions of vaccines or the encouragement of people to take the vaccine requires that kind of public education on the ground and not mere announcements from persons in different quarters. So the legislation also places very heavy reliance on ensuring that communities are aware of ways of preventing disasters, mitigating the adverse effects of a disaster, and preparing for and responding to and recovering from these disasters. Because you would know that the disasters that we are accustomed to relate to hurricane, tropical storm, flooding, and once in a while, earthquake. So we had to kind of adapt to the provisions of the legislation addressing our mind to the pandemic.
And this legislation itself puts Un-Tengle at the center, at the point of the whole management of the pandemic. The legislation actually spells out Un-Tengle, Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, as the point entity, as it were, in the management of the whole process.
Let me ask you this. You're talking about legislation, you're talking about the involvement of citizens, and we're also talking about the office of your office being on the ground. How active is your office in helping to educate? Because this is a brand new experience, as you just mentioned, for all of us, least of all the people on the ground, the citizens themselves. So how important, one, is educating the people, one, and two, how well is this being pursued by agents like yours, or yeah?
Well, let me help to answer that. The legislation itself sets out the organs and the regime through which public education is to be dispersed and dispensed across Jamaica. Right? You are well aware that we have parish disaster committees, but more than that, we have zonal committees. We have legislative provisions that, for instance, says that where a particular community is afflicted, how that particular community is to be treated with the kind of support it requires, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
The Office of the Public Defender is an organization that receives complaints of any violation of a constitutional right. And that is why we go out in communities when we are aware of these allegations existing. The legislation itself sets out the scheme, to be the scheme and the regime to be utilized in educating Jamaicans. We also use the program we established called Constitutionally Speaking to speak to the Jamaican public about these matters, and also when we are invited to participate in other discussions along this line and of this nature.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I hear you. It just seems to me that unless the public or the community know their constitutional rights, sometimes them can't know if it violated.
That's true. And we engage in other programs, A long-standing one is with the Family Planning Board, which is a program called Know Your Rights.
Mm-hmm.
But I would want to suggest to you and to the Jamaican public and wider that the Office of the Public Defender, while it has its specific mandate, is not the only organization in Jamaica with the responsibility to protect rights. Ours is really to investigate violation of constitutional rights, also to join in the public education. But all agencies, ministries, departments of government have a constitutional duty to protect the rights of the citizens.
Absolutely.
So, whilst we are up, and our responsibility is to investigate allegations of violation of those constitutional rights, and where appropriate, to offer redress, remedy of some sort to mend that violation. So Jamaica has a plethora of organizations and institutions, including the Jamaica Constabulary Force, that is the police. They are to police with the constitutional rights of the citizen foremost in their minds. That's not only OPD.
I hear you loud and clear. Thanks for explaining the role. Is there any other role and function of the Public Defender's Office that our public needs to understand?
Well, one of the things that the public needs to understand is that we are not a law firm. People routinely come here for legal advice on, say, a custody matter, land dispute, divorce, court matters of all sorts. Mr. McKenzie and I don't operate chambers, so to speak, in the traditional way of a lawyer, that a lawyer operates. This doesn't, we, however, do not turn away anybody. We have done, especially last year, we did hundreds of those, of giving advice so that persons could be better directed as to how they could find a resolution to their problems. The other thing that the public needs to know is that we are not a human rights advocate group. We are an investigative mechanism. But that does not mean that where we cannot find redress for citizens, we cannot advocate publicly their cause. Our legislation, or the legislation under which we operate, allows us to provide what is called legal aid assistance to complainants.
How you do that?
We have a panel of attorneys,
Mm-hmm.
and where we cannot resolve a matter,
Mm-hmm.
we share that list with the complainant, and the complainant may make a selection of an attorney, or the complainant may have his or her own attorney. And we provide money given to us by Parliament of Jamaica to fund litigation to protect rights.
Okay.
I'll give you 2 examples. In fact, the very first one we did related to a complaint we had received out of Westmoreland involving breach of covenant, breach of change of use out in Landilo, Westmoreland, and we provided the necessary financial resources, and we prepared a report. Of course, it was challenged on judicial review, because the other thing the public needs to know, any report I write, you can challenge it if you don't agree with it. You can take it to court on judicial review and say that it wasn't I didn't come to reasonable conclusion,
Or the findings were unfair.
or the findings were unfair, and so on.
Let me ask you this very quickly. Was the finding that you had of political victimization, was that challenged?
In which one?
At Bull Bay or Con Peace or wherever it was that you went?
No, we didn't put it that they were political victimization. We found that they were the distribution wasn't adequate, necessarily didn't comport with what was required. We didn't allege outline political victimization.
Okay. What did you
But
say?
not only that, when the soldiers moved into the area, because you know that JDF has been routinely involved, whether in states of emergency or quarantine or curfews.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, forgive me for putting it this way. They did not bring in with them, or shortly after their arrival, food supplies did not come in. And if you ask people to stay in their homes, then there has to be provision for how they are going to be fed.
Absolutely.
And cared, and our understanding, and this was right through the communities, the food took too long to come.
Which is a very serious allegation, A food that.
Yeah, because what came first was the coercion, and then after the coercion, the feeding. We thought both should come hand in hand. The moment you coerce people, prevent them from accessing their food source, precisely, you should provide it for them.
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, the tipping point for us in Bull Bay was actually TV images of people complaining that they could not go to shop. And we felt that there were already restrictions on the number of persons who could be in a shop. We felt that persons ought properly to be allowed to go to shop in limited numbers, So that everybody cannot be in the shop one time, but in the restricted numbers. And that is really what caused us to head out to Bull Bay, of course, after the Ministry of Health had indicated that it was safe to return to that community.
Okay.
Because we observe the guidelines given to us by the Ministry of Health, and our observance of those guidelines is very strict.
So did it eventually settle down? And we're still saying it was a new experience. Did it eventually settle down, and were your observations respected and corrected?
Well, after the curfew was over, that was basically the end of the matter. And the community returned to some normalcy. But what we also observed is that persons, some escaped from the quarantine area before it came into effect, and some continue to leave the community. People who live in these communities, people know the ways in and out of the community that the security forces may not know.
Mm-hmm.
And persons kept leaving the community and coming back into the community and so on.
The same thing happened in St. Catherine, right?
Yeah, word got around even before it was. But a lot of people lived in St. Catherine before the parish was locked down and went in one case, we can recall as far as to, I think it was Triller.
Hanover. But what I found interesting with that is that the community in Hanover reported the existence and presence of strange persons in the community. And it was discovered that these persons had come in from St. Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make the reports of what we know
Mm-hmm.
in relation to crime with the same sense of alacrity and purpose.
I agree with you. That you complain.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So
yes.
you know of things happening in your community. You know of perpetrators. Tell what you know,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to give your name and address. There are ways and means of giving the information anonymously.
And all this has to do with the involvement of citizens, the responsibility of citizens that we really need to be pushing more, because it's one thing to complain and to say what you don't like, but what you're doing.
But you see, we have fallen in a bad situation, because there are many activities occurring across Jamaica in which citizens have not been informed of. And we can go straight to Sansan, Portland.
Go again. Say that again. I'm sorry.
We can go to other situations where state agencies are doing work, for instance, road work in communities where hillsides are being cut down, bulldozed down, and this involves some person's land. Communities are being changed, and yet the communities have not been consulted with. We have developments across Kingston and St. Andrew where we have high-density high-rise going up in communities, and there is not any community engagement.
Yes.
So I live here, and you want to put a high-rise next door to me, where my privacy rights will be breached because you are now looking down into my bathroom, or my bedroom, or my veranda, or my backyard. And there is not the necessity to come to the community and say, these are the plans for this community. We are going to increase density by whatever. And have a consultation with the communities.
Yes, yes.
The road that is being bulldozed, or the hillside that is being bulldozed in Sansan, we're very clear that the National Works Agency, who are the persons responsible for main roads in Jamaica, did not consult with the Sansan community.
Very, very bad.
We are in a situation where communities get up and just see a zinc fence around a lot with a little notice. It requires more than that.
And this is and
Jamaica. Let me finish, and then you can say what you have to say. This Jamaica belongs to all of us.
Yeah.
All of us. Each one has a stake on this small piece of rock.
Yes. What I wanted to say is that it is so important for community vigilance, because with this happening on one side and the community not vigilant on the other, the violation of rights, the pathway is set for that.
Yes, And we want to say, we want to agree with your observations of the need for community vigilance. And we want to remind communities. And some communities are also wealthy communities. Some communities are not so wealthy. We have some legal aid assistance that can be utilized in protecting constitutional rights.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, the Constitution protects my right to property and my peaceful enjoyment of my home.
Yes.
And my small space around me. These are sort of things that are embedded in a democratic society.
Mm-hmm.
My little space, this is where I sit in the evenings, and this is my little private space.
Let me ask you this. For the communities that you feel have been violated in whatever way, let us say like driving on the toll road, I see people's property, precariously perched here now because of the digging up of the land and all of that. Can their rights be adjusted after the fact, or would it have had to be done prior to them going in?
Which one of the toll roads they're talking about?
The Edward Seaga toll road from Ocho Rios to Kingston, the north-south. Yes, the north-south highway. I see a lot of land, and I see the land even coming down more and more, and there's more debris and more land slipping away from people's homes.
Well, I will tell you this. One of the things that we find to be absolutely remarkable, in fact, it boggles the mind, that when you carry out your further investigation, there was no environmental impact assessment done. There was no environmental study done on many of these projects. Not talking about that particular highway. I'm thinking primarily as the latest one is Sansan, which is this quaint kind of rainforest community where we don't like speeding vehicles, actually. We prefer to go down the road slowly. The roads are narrow, massive old trees, holy pavine. Some people may call it bush, hovering and creating that sense of calm and peace. That has just now been removed. But more than that, the area out there that is being bulldozed, it's an area that has always been subject to landslides, instability on the hillside.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it remarkable that there is no environmental study done before you put a bulldozer on that piece of mountainside.
Yep.
But then, we are just lawyers here. We don't have technical knowledge. But it would seem to make sense that where I'm going to cut a piece of land that is always susceptible to landslide. And we can talk about St. Mary, and we can talk about Portland, famous for landslide. These are studies that it would appear that we would need to do.
Yes.
Of course.
Well.
And common sense, Mr. Mac adds.
Yes. Well, continue to have a loud voice, because that seems to be one of the ways out, because, that's the only way that the people can be defended, if that's the only way. And not only your voice, but as you mentioned, all voices need to be heard.
All voices have to be joined. All voices have to be joined, because we are in a space where community consultation appears not to be a priority.
Yes. Okay. Well, we've run out of time, but we anxiously await next week, Thursday, to have a discussion on whatever it is that comes up. So thank you again.
All the best. It's so good to hear you.
Thank you so very much. And it's always good to talk to you. So we meet again next week on the bridge. All right? Okay, so it is now time for us to join Hakeem Cunningham, who is online live in Denham Town. Good morning, Hakeem.
Good morning, Miss Kelly.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, so you are from Denham Town. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, as you said, my name is Hakeem Cunningham. 25 years old, current industrial engineering. Well, not a student anymore because I'm on the process of graduating from the Caribbean Maritime University where I studied industrial engineering.
Congrats.
Out into the field. Currently, I'm working at Wisinka Group Limited as a maintenance technician. So I'm just a humble individual working for greatness.
Right, and you are originally from the community of Denham Town?
Yes, born and raised in Denham Town.
Okay, wonderful. It's wonderful that you can give back because you've obviously gotten a lot.
Yes.
Okay, so you help youths in your community through volunteerism and education. Explain a little bit more about exactly how you do that.
So I'm a member of the Denham Town Community Development Committee, and through our committee, we do a lot of outreach programs. We do a lot of community work. One of our most recent projects that we just completed was a partnership between the Multicare Youth Foundation, Passport to Success. That was the name of the project. So that project was to teach young individuals from ages 14 all the way up to 29 about life skills in general. So these are general things that they would, techniques and knowledge that they would use within their everyday life, from goal setting to time management, stress management, projects of life, you name it, we touched on it.
Okay.
We also educated them on topics like gender-based violence and sexual abuse. That's a bit of everything, because in the society which we live, it is always good to have knowledge in all areas, not only academia, but general, how you'd say, general life skills.
You're talking in the past. Do you still do this?
Yes, the project was, as I said, it just completed this Saturday gone, and we have an upcoming project similar. It's called Past Pavers. So this is where we have, it's a 3-point project. So we have a homework program that will be established for the youth within the community. We have a parenting, facilitating, similar to life skills, and I also have a youth core, which is be another component of life skills.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Passport to Success. Why 14 to 29?
So we realize that the core age to best capture the attention of the individuals within our society starts from teens. But it also goes all the way up to their young adult life. So if we're able to nurture from that stage, then we're able to develop a well-rounded individual where all will benefit.
Wow, good. And let's just talk a bit about conflict resolution, because you are in an area where, I tell you the truth, it's not even fair to say you are in an area that would be considered volatile, because the whole Jamaica, but the whole Jamaica volatile, me darling. But anyway, let me ask you this: what do you find to be the more frequent issues that need resolving in your conflict resolution sessions?
The more frequent issue would be how people on a whole, their approach to whenever there's a conflict, how do I approach to get this issue or this matter addressed and resolved in a peaceful way? Oftentimes, youths are quick to jump to the more violent way, fights, verbal confrontation, and to even some extent, it does get physical where someone ends up either in the hospital or, sadly, in the morgue. So if we're able to teach our youths, not only our youths, but everyone in general, peaceful ways to resolve issues that we will experience from time to time throughout our lives, especially within how things within our environment is. It does get tense, with the violence and the crime rate, but we have to find better solutions to which to fix whatever challenges or whatever issues that arise.
Absolutely. Hakeem, do you find, you see, because in many of the circles that I find myself, I find that some of the issues are relatively simple issues
That is true.
that can easily be resolved if we just had the life skill.
That is true. Because some of these issues that escalate, you're like, how did this even happen?
Yes.
Someone, simple passing and some small confrontations turn out to be a big thing. But as I said, some of the topics that we touched in life skill was conflict resolution, stress management, how to be confident in yourself, your refusal skills. Because a problem that we realize in our society is that peer pressure and the environment tends to take a toll on the youth of the society. Some of them, let's not say all, some of them are not able to stand up for themselves and say, this is not right, and I will not engage in the wrong. So if they're able to build that self-confidence to stand up for what they believe is right, and also educate them on the right and the wrong.
Right.
Because as I've learned, education is one of the keys to success. So through education, and not only within the schools, but within, as I said, even education within the home, these will help the youths who are the future of our country.
For real. All right, life skills. Life skills is something that we never stop learning. So for those who are listening and think that it's just young people who don't know life skills, we always learn new life skills. So it's something that we need to get ourselves in the habit of learning. And may I just add that it is a powerful tool that can not only save lives, but help us to vibrate at a much higher level.
On a positive vibe.
Absolutely, because sometimes people will say to themselves, people just deal with me them way, and them not deal with that person that way there. And that's not true, because them probably dealing with that person that same way there. But one of life skills, is to know when to walk away.
That is true. And one of the things I've learned throughout my life, some of the time, is not what you say, it is how you say it.
True.
So if we're able to, as you said, walk away from a situation, not everything has to be addressed right away. Because one thing I've learned, when you're trying to make a decision, when you're either upset, angry, or in a very emotional state, oftentimes you work off of impulse instead of logic.
Absolutely. Well said. Very well said. And, especially in the society that we are here in Jamaica, a lot of people will probably think that walking away means you're a coward or you're a boy or them kind of things. But when you consider the alternative, you realize that it really is a wise decision sometimes, because misery love company,
Yes, it's so true. And trouble always find a way to prevent itself, but you have to be strong enough to withstand the devil.
Absolutely. All right. So how appreciative, how interactive, or how proactive are the young members of the community to your outreach program?
Well, the young individuals in the program, they're, for the majority, they're very interested and they appreciate it to a great level, because some of them are saying, even now in this pandemic that we're going through, some of them have been out of school for almost 2 years. Some of them will not even see the traditional school, who knows, for probably the next year or two, depending on how well the pandemic is able to be managed. Mm-hmm. So being able, because one of the components that we tried to do was to get them in small groups where they can interact, and it's mainly on group activities. So we have a small session, generally 1 or 2 hours, whenever having the session. Groups of 10 with 2 trainers or facilitators. So just work through the different topics, work through the lesson, get them actively involved. And they are very much responsive, as I say, in a positive way. I have some who are saying, sir, like, even when they're to leave, they're like, sir, but we can do a next session. I said, no, safety first. So, we don't want to break curfew. We want everyone to be able to reach home within a certain time. And the reality of it is we live in an environment and a society sometimes where anything can happen, and prevention is better than cure.
I love that.
So it's best to get them home safe within a timely manner, because generally, due to my work, I try to do the sessions in the afternoon, so anywhere between 5 and 7.
Okay.
If I have a day off, then I'm able to do it on a Saturday a bit earlier, where we can get more sessions done. But they're very responsive to it, and they're always looking forward to it. We've done some of them have even moved on from the life skill into mentorship programs.
Wow, I love
they're
that.
paired with mentors from within the community and also through the various organizations within our group.
Okay. All right. So the Denham Town Community Development Council, Multi-Care Youth Foundation, these are at least two of the non-profit organizations that you are associated with.
Yes. We are also associated with JSIF, who is a big partner on the development of the community. So all the environmental work, all the beautifications within the community. There's so much projects going on in Denham Town all the time. Persons on the outside, you'd be amazed to see, despite all the challenges that we face with the violence and the crime within our community, we are still able to achieve so much. Even over the summer, during the pandemic, we're able to run a successful summer camp where we house 100 students, ages from 9 all the way up to 14. It was a challenge, but because of the team that we have, everyone is motivated, they're passionate about giving back and helping to develop the community. We'll just get the work done.
Okay. And my next question would be this, though. Fine, you have a mandate, and one of the mandates is to actually access at-risk youth and hopefully make a difference. I have found going through some communities that, yes, you're accessing some at-risk groups, but some ones who really need accessing kind of depend on the peripheral, just a watch for see what go on. Are you really getting to those kind of young people who need organizations like yours?
Yes, we try our best to reach out, because as it is, in my environment, you consider every youth at risk. But some are at a deeper level than others, because some, they don't have the support at home where they can be guided properly. They have to try to reach down on the corners, on certain places where youth would be loitering, some not going to school, some not even in a program where they can learn a skill. For instance, we have so much programs through the Heart Trust and the government agencies, but some of them are just not willing to go on their own. So this is where we have to reach out to them, educate them, inform them about the different activities and programs that they can get involved in, which will help to benefit their life in so many ways.
And finally, Hakeem, give us an example of what you would consider to be a success story in your community.
Well, there's so many examples, but we have had youths who, through the various programs, even for instance, the CDC, where they came in to the program, whether through summer school, and they have went from one stage to another, which they have grown to get educated, whether by a skill or going back to school. They're in jobs currently where they can fully be responsible for themselves and not have to rely on necessarily their parents or their families. So there's so many stories and so many examples. It's hard to pick one.
But that's great. I'm happy that it's as hard because we really need to know that it is working. Because why we need to know it's working is because on the ground there is just so much negativity, so much crime, and coming from targeted areas that we really need to know that something is working.
That is true, and this is where, for oftentimes, the bad tends to overshadow the good. But this is where we as the volunteers, and we always have to be recruiting new volunteers into our programs and into our committee. We as the volunteers have to be that light for our community. We have to reach out. We have to be willing to say, hey, despite the challenges that face us as a community, there is good within our community.
Yes.
There is good potential from the youth of the community, and even the elders of the community are able to guide the youth within the space.
Absolutely. Well, before you go, Bridge FM salutes you as an unsung hero. Continue to do your work. Who knows? Later, you may be one of the heroes that the world may know about.
I'm just going to continue to work, and sometimes, as you always say, the unsung heroes, without them, despite everyone might not get the recognition that I am able to get even today, but we have to continue to do our best.
Amen.
Despite the recognition, as long as we continue to do our best as a society, as from one community to another, we will see the difference that we're making. And in the long run, because I'm one who believes in the long run, I don't really go after the short term. Mm-hmm. But in the long run, we will see how it will benefit each and every one within our environment and our country.
Very well said. Continue to do your volunteerism. Continue to reach out and be a part of the community that you're from. And continue to personally do well.
Thank you very much. And I will take that.
Okay, all right. Have a wonderful day and send my love to your community.
Thanks, and some of them are on the line listening right now.
All right, just bless them up for me, all right?
All right, thanks, Miss Kelly, and do enjoy this every day. And thanks to the whole Bridge team for reaching out to me, just to shine some light during these trying times, because we are in trying times.
They're listening. All right? All right, have a great day. Okay, thanks. Beautiful. That's Hakeem Cunningham from the Denham Town community, and he is the brainchild, I'm thinking, the brainchild of the Passport to Success, and he's doing a wonderful job. We're really trying to go into the communities and find the ones who are working in a positive way. So if you're enjoying these interviews, identify yourself, because my producer is just anxiously awaiting to have you on the bridge right here on Un-Tengle. We're going to take a break. We soon come. You know that what transpired over the weekend is still topical our side. Mm-hmm. And there are two things that I think have come out of it that we probably need to talk about. And one is jungle justice. Because I don't know if you heard, but in the search for the perpetrator who it is alleged captured or abducted the two girls, you know, they killed the wrong man.
Wow. And I actually saw a quick footage, but it was removed from where I saw it. And I said the same thing on Monday. I said, I hope if when they catch the perpetrator, that they just hand him over to the police. In the back of my mind, I was thinking the same thing. What if it's some wrong identity situation? And, you know, I see a lot of people walking around with them arm themselves basically, just in case them hold on to this brother. So I'm saying to myself, I hope them hold the right person when they do hold the right person and no one is injured, you know, the wrong way.
I tell you something, Beauregard, it's in the culture that we come from. I was just hoping that the police caught him because I know that if it go any other way, it going to end up badly. Right. So I was just hoping against hope that the police were the ones who caught him. But, you know, we can advise people. I think this happens with police too, you know, because you see, if you see a mob coming at you, right, you caught between the devil and the deep blue sea, because you want to run because you don't know where them are come at you for. And if you run, them are going to think of you.
True indeed.
So I think that's really what happened. He ran. And because he ran, it just almost an admission of guilt.
Yes.
But
and everybody automatically saying, why you run?
Yes, but him run because him, I mean, if you see people coming at you with weapons, you know, you don't know what it is for. So if you didn't know what it was for, him could have ball out under me. But if you don't know what it is for, you see, the thing about it is, Beauregard, is that the culture in Jamaica is jungle justice. And for those of us who were raised here, we kind of make it slip under the radar because we kind of deep down don't see nothing wrong with it. But at this point here now, we have to revisit jungle justice. Because enough time, the wrong person gets killed.
True indeed, which was the case this time around.
Exactly. And then we spoke a lot last week, I think it was, on Tuesday, about sexual offenders here in Jamaica and how they should really be identified and made known in the community. We've been getting a lot of texts and calls your side, particularly from those in the diaspora, saying that Jamaica just needs to get on board right now with this thing. There's just no way you can have sex offenders up and down in your community, and people may or may not know.
Too many things are happening in Jamaica, sister, which the government of Jamaica need to address, things that they need to prioritize and make sure that those things are taken care of first and foremost before a lot of things that I see that's happening, and this is one of them, making sure that the youths of Jamaica are actually safe and they're being raised and brought up in a safe environment.
Absolutely.
And that's the Jamaica that we want. That's the Jamaica I grew up in.
Yep.
So
me too, but then a lot has changed, and we just have to change with the times. And a lot of particularly Jamaicans living overseas are kind of outraged about the fact that we still don't get on board yet. We need to be on board. How many more children you want to get missing before we get on board? One more thing, Beauregard, happening this side is in response to this cult leader. You see?
Yes.
You know what? Okay, him is him, and we don't know that him is a mess. But something that came out of all of this is just how gullible we are as people. And the fact that it happens amongst people who are, let us use the word, uninformed, is even sadder, because we really are very gullible. Because I went on this brethren Facebook page, and if he could sway so many people with his obvious rants and clear challenges mentally, it says it don't speak well for us, because he swayed quite a few people.
Yes, he did. True. He definitely did, sister. He definitely did, Mama Elise. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, or I hope anyone's feelings are hurt, but religion has really been the downfall of our people for a very long time.
It's a bitter medicine that we have to take, because there is no way, Beauregard, that we can have a conversation about this and not mention religion generally. Because if we look at some of what legitimate preachers teach that we buy, then it might not be so strange to figure that them buy this man gibberish too. Because legitimate meaning accepted, religious leaders teach quite a lot of, stuff that don't go so. And we just need to generally question everything that comes before us.
True indeed.
And not because somebody says he's a man of God or a woman of God, we're just going to just drink down everything that they're saying. A lot of even organized religions teach things that are questionable, and we have been groomed to be obedient to nonsense.
Exactly. For hundreds of years, sister.
Yes, my brother.
Hundreds of years. Yeah, man. It's been like that for a very, very long time, and hopefully it changes sooner than later, sister.
Yes. We hope this is a wake-up call, because now that we're having all kinds of things to say about this, brethren, we need to question ourselves and find out within ourselves, what have I been buying that don't make no sense either? Over the years, as you say.